Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about which mulch is best for your garden and the mulch that you want to avoid because it will absolutely destroy your garden. I'm sitting here in a new area of Grocery Road Gardens that we built. If you notice, right here we have some wood chip mulch and right here we have some grass mulch. I gave a couple of talks this last weekend at the Keepers of the Old Ways over in Dothan, Alabama. And a woman there said, now I'm confused because you're talking about wood chips being great for perennials, but liking to use grass in your garden, and now I've got wood chips in my garden, and I don't think that was the best idea. Should I pull the wood chips out of my garden and replace them with grass? No. Today we're going to talk about a few different mulching options, and we're going to try and keep it as cheap and easy as possible, and I'm going to kind of give you an overview of different mulches and where you might want to use them, and then we're going to talk about, obviously, what the best one is. And it's going to be like one of those trick things where you get to the end and you're like, oh, come on. Oh, why did I watch this whole video just to hear that? David DeGlutt is a fraud! And I don't like his brand. I don't like the hat and the bare feet. I don't like the branding on this channel. It's dumb. I'm not gonna do this video anymore! Almost everybody has this mulch available. Grass clippings. Do you have a yard? Why do you have a yard? You should have a food forest. It's useful to have a yard because you have to have some place to graze your goats or to graze your lawnmower. So if you have a lawnmower and you can bag up grass clippings are fantastic, right? One of the reasons why grass clippings are super good for the garden is that they decompose rapidly. Now, if you were gonna do a border of azaleas or something like that, it's like you don't want something that decomposes rapidly. So you might use pine bark chips or eucalyptus mulch or something like that. But in a vegetable garden, the grass clippings are kind of like a slow release fertilizer. I love grass clippings. They can tend to mat up a little bit. So you gotta make sure, if you put them on really thick, they're not turning into a big mat. But grass clippings are readily available. They're one of the very, very best mulches that you can use in a garden space. And variants of this would be straw or hay. Straw is the leftover from grain production. So straw is the mostly carbon, less seeds in it usually, though you often get some wheat or rye or oats or something coming up through it. The thing I don't like about straw is that it's often defoliated with glyphosate, meaning that they spray the crop in order to harvest it all at once, which is just totally messed up. And that means that you might be getting some of those residues through into your garden unless you have an organic source. But if you know what's going on your lawn, and hopefully you're not spraying it with anything, I don't care if you're putting 10-10-10 on it or turf builder or something like that. But if you're putting weed and feed, with atrazine, or if you have the Chemlon guys coming by and spraying, that's not ideal. You can manage your lawn and think of it as a reservoir of fertility and mulch to feed your garden. If you manage it properly, having a big patch of grass is a great thing because you've got tons and tons of mulch. And I like it on my gardens when I have enough. Another mulch option here. I was talking about the long-lasting stuff. These are pine shreds from a local sawmill where they clean up these big logs and they shred the leftovers. This stuff does not feed your garden beds very well at all. It takes a long time to break down. So it is a good mulch for pathways or to put on the surface around trees where it's going to decay very slowly, but it'll keep the ground cool, keep the moisture in. It's just not the best, and you definitely don't want to mix it in a vegetable garden situation. So I like this stuff for long-term paths, and rather like some other slow decaying things, it has its value. Think of pine needles or oak leaves. Those are great. You can use them. Are they the best in your lettuce bed? Probably not. Better than nothing. Probably. But they're really good for long-term path situations, and eventually they do decay, and then you can take the material that's in the pathway and dig it out, and you have a layer of compost. You can throw it onto your beds and turn around and remulch again with something else that lasts a long time. You put grass clippings in your garden beds, it rots down fast. You put grass clippings in your pathways, it rots down fast, and next thing you know, your pathways are full of weeds, and it just doesn't last long enough. So, quick rule of thumb: stuff that decays quickly goes in the beds. It's going to feed the beds. Stuff that decays more slowly goes in the pathway. Stuff that's really high in carbon, definitely put it in the pathway, you know, so it stays longer. But that's just a rule of thumb. If you want to put slower decaying materials in your bed because you want to get a couple seasons use out of it, you can do that. There are benefits to mulch, whether or not it's slow decaying or fast decaying, so don't get too hung up on it. Just mulch with something if you're going to use mulch. I don't like this really, really high carbon stuff in here because it will bind up nitrogen if I mix it in, and I invariably end up putting some into the planting holes and stuff if I've got a thick layer of it on top. And I just don't think it's got that much nutrition in it. This grass has a lot of nutrition in it. This is mostly just carbon, and because it's very fresh wood chips, it's got some volatile oils and stuff in there that I don't really think are going to be great for the garden bed. But after it decays in here and it serves its purpose as a pathway for some period of time, it'll get rotten and black underneath. I can dump that stuff onto these beds and use it. Another excellent mulch is to just use the weeds. And food forest systems in particular, it makes sense to just let a whole ton of stuff grow, no matter what it is. You're getting biomass, you're getting nutrients accumulated, you're getting carbon, and then you just slash it down and throw it around whatever you want to feed. So say you've got an apple tree in the ground, or in my case here, this is a pawpaw tree. You just are going to slash those weeds down and throw them. So I love to see the tall weeds growing around the food forest. I can get out there with a scythe, or I can do it the little way with a tiny little hand sickle, and I can chop and drop the weeds and make a nice little mulch bed, which is going to feed the plant and provide the benefits of mulch, keeping the ground moist and spongy, feeding the worms, feeding the soil life, and composting our enemies. Another thing you can do is to deliberately grow materials that you're going to chop and drop. Now, you can do this as a cover crop and just make a living mulch, which is really great when, say, you don't have a lot of grass to cut, you don't have wood chips, you don't have materials. Well, go and buy some seeds and seed an area. What I've got right here is a mixture of different grains along with some winter ryegrass and some clover and some peas that I spread down this pathway and raked it in and then watered it, and here it is. I did that earlier in the year, and now I don't have to even mulch this pathway because I've got grass in it that's alive, and I can continually cut this over and over again to put around my little crops. So this apple tree gets a little bit, this sunflower gets a little bit, this goji berry gets a little bit, and I could just go down here and mow the grass. Or I could be real clever and get my scythe. But it needed to be sharpened, so I'm not going to show you that. It's too high effort. So I'm using this tiny high effort tool instead, and just going by hand, caveman style. So if you have a lack of mulch material, remember that. You can just seed the ground and grow your own. One thing that we did this last year that was incredible was we grew sun hemp. Sun hemp, nitrogen fixing, massive amount of biomass, like 8 foot tall, which we could chop and drop. So if you've got an empty patch, a bare patch, a piece of lawn you're not using, the edge of your garden, an empty garden bed, fill it totally full of something like sun hemp or sorghum Sudan grass in the summer. Chop, 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 chop. You get tons of materials, and you can often cut it again and again and again and make your own mulch, because getting chip drop to drop stuff at your house is not always easy, so you might as well grow your own. So speaking of chip drop, my favorite mulch for perennials in particular, but also for pathways and for garden beds if it's what I have, is a mixed hardwood mulch from the Power Company. So I was able to catch some guys who were clearing the lines because a friend of mine told me that they were doing it, and I was able to get some shredded mulch that was a mix of different hardwoods. So there's hickory in here, there's oak in here, there's wild plums and persimmons and all kinds of other stuff mixed in, some pine, and it's all mixed together. Now what this means is that there's a wide range of plant material, which means there's a wide range of nutrients, and it rots down nicer than the pine does, leaving a lot of rich humus. You can use this stuff for potting soil. This has been 2 years now. It was actually almost 2 years ago, and we had the piles piled up. They smoked for a while, and then we used some of it in the garden beds, and then a lot of it just sat. And then a friend of mine, when we moved, helped us move it over here, and we got a pile. We've used almost all of it now, but this material that's underneath is super rich. So this is great slow release compost. Really, really good for a food forest. It's great if you're growing trees, and some people will say that you know, you want to have a fungally dominated soil in a forest situation. So go ahead and put down wood chips. Wood chips get a lot of fungus in them, which is great. So the idea is vegetable gardening is more bacterially dominated, fast growing, quick, live fast, die young, like a bacteria, or long-term, slow decay, cool, lots of mycelium strands running and creeping through and eating the lignins, digesting the carbon slowly over time, fungal. So that's forest floor material. This is great instant forest floor material in vast quantities, so you can feed just about any perennial with it. And when it gets to this, this would be great for your vegetable garden as well, or you could just sift it and start seeds in it. Just probably have to add a little bit of nitrogen still. That's an awesome mulch. So if you don't want to worry about bacterially dominated, fungally dominated, blah, 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 just about any mulch is better than no mulch. I mean, don't use shredded tires, you know, plastic, unless you absolutely have to do that to grow food. I'm not going to tell you to not do something that's growing you food. That's the primary thing. But use the mulch you have. I have a lot of grass. I have a beat up 0-turn mower that I got a great deal on. Does not have a bag. So I drive it around in circles and shoot it out the side until I make a mound. Or I have kids do it for me. Half of these mounds I did, half of these mounds the kids did. This is the mulch you have. This is the best mulch. Use what you have. If you got pine needles, use some pine needles. If you got oak leaves, use some oak leaves. If you've got grass clippings, use grass clippings. The mulch you have, it's like a friend in need. A friend close by is better than a brother far away. Use what you got. But here is the final thing I'm going to tell you. What's really, really a mulch you do not want to use, because it will destroy your garden. And that is hay. But wait a minute, why can't I use hay? Root stout potato planting method. Hey, it's fantastic. Now, hay, you're gonna think it's the seeds, right? Hay is full of seeds. You don't want to use that. Well, these grass clippings are full of seeds, but I'll use these and not hay. But David the Good, this is just shredded hay. Stop leading us on. You're just trying to get clicks. No, let me tell you what's wrong with hay. A lot of hay is now produced on fields that are sprayed with long-term persistent herbicides. And I'm not talking like hippy-dippy stuff, like there might be a little glyphosate residue, and you're like, well, I've used it for years and it's never hurt my tomatoes. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about stuff that gets sprayed and goes away enough to not kill your plants. I'm talking about stuff that will kill all the broadleaf plants in your garden for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I'm talking about stuff that's so nasty you can compost it and it still goes through. I'm talking about stuff that's so nasty you can feed it to your cow, passes through. You compost the manure. You put the manure on your garden and it kills your garden. Ask me how I know it kills your garden. I've done videos on it before. I write about it in Compost Everything, the Good Guide to Extreme Composting. The long-term persistent herbicides that are often sprayed on hay become pulled up by the plant itself. You put it on your garden, it kills it. I had a friend who grew rare Chinese herbs. She had a food forest with rare medicinal herbs in it that she had collected for some years. Somebody told her, we have a load of rotten hay. You can have it. She said, fantastic, I need mulch for all of my beautiful herbs. Did you spray anything on this hay? Nope. Nope. Just normal hay. She took it home. She put it on the herbs. A few weeks later, she notices that a lot of the tips are starting to curl, it's starting to get damaged. All of them are starting to show damage all around the edges of it. It's after a rain. It's soaked into the ground. The poison is still in that stuff. It's really incredibly nasty, and I'm not exaggerating at all how bad this is. When I tell you manure will kill your garden or hay will kill your garden, you know me, I'm the cheapest guy in the world. I will use just about anything. I believe in composting everything, but this stuff is a hellish manufacturer, you know, of just, it's modern science evil. Just remember that. It's horrible. It is a shortcut to growing pastures, and it is used extensively and recommended extensively. So if you use hay and there is any chance that it could have been sprayed, don't take it. Now if it's hay from the old guy down the street, he never sprays anything, never has sprayed anything, he tells you he never sprayed anything, you trust him that he's never sprayed anything, go ahead and get it. That's a good source. But a lot of sources are not. We can't feed hay from the farms around here to our cows, because the cow manure can't then be used for the garden. So it's one of the super frustrating things, but you need to know it. So remember these two things. Anything take away. Use the mulch that you have. Think creatively. If you got organic matter you can throw on top of the ground, you get all those benefits of the mulch, the spongy soil, feeding the worms, keeping the roots cool, no tilling. Everything is being protected from the rain, all that beautiful stuff, right? So remember, just use the mulch that you have. Just about anything is usable. Unless it's poisonous plants, then you might want to just dry them out and throw them in your compost pile first. And then secondarily, don't use hay that has any chance of having been sprayed, because you could wreck your entire garden for the year. Remember those 2 points. Don't get too confused. Use what you got. If you can't be with the hay you love the hay you have. I think there was a song about that, actually. Thanks for joining me. If you want to learn more about composting everything and how to avoid toxins and to feed your garden for free, check out my book, Compost Everything, The Good Guide to Extreme Composting. It's cheap, and once you spend that, that's the last thing you have to spend to feed your garden for free. Check it out. I'll put a link below. Compost Everything, The Good Guide to Extreme Composting. And until next time, may your thumbs always be green.
Wish there was more I could do with these scraps. Thanks to David the Good, I compost everything.
Be nice to your mother and always say please. Be loyal to friends and compost your enemies. Be nice to your mother and always say please. Be loyal to friends and compost your enemies. Be nice to your mother and always say please. Be loyal to friends and compost your enemies.
So quick rule of thumb then, slow decaying stuff in your pathways, stuff that takes longer to decay in your pathways. Does that make sense? The first mulch I'm going to talk about. Wow, why would I say that the first mulch I'm going to talk about? I don't need to talk. I need to like announce everything. It's called telegraphing it. You don't telegraph it. The first thing that I'm going to start talking about in a minute is this thing. Let's start talking about this thing. You don't do that. Let's talk about grass mulch. This is grass right here.
Space is a place on the dark side of the moon. The Decathlon 2 is in development and will be flying soon.